I'm sorry. But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Welcome, folks, to another edition of the Corporation Nation radio program. I'm Clint Richardson, and with me today, as every Thursday, is Mr. Freeman Burt from Colorado. His website is onlyfreemen.com, and, well, let's see. Order of the day. Today is Thursday, November 14th. We are live. Well, today we're going to continue our conversation from last week a little bit. We want to hit this home, I think, more than anything else. We're talking about the concept of what status is. Now, also to remind you here, we do have a new chat room, which is corporationnation.chatango.com. If you want to come over and join us in the chat room, corporationnation.chatango.com. So, one of the most interesting status that is assigned to us is the status of man and woman. Now, man can be both a political and a natural status, if you will, one in the natural realm. You can't help but using the word man, but also man is also a legal term. What's worse, though, is actually the word woman. Now, don't be offended, folks, but you see, woman is a status. There are natural females, and then there are women. You see, a woman is actually, strangely enough, a legal status. Now, how does this work? One of my good friends down in Texas, she's adamant if I ever use or reference her as a legal status of a woman, she gets so upset. She just gets so upset. She gives me what for. So, what has to happen first before there's any kind of status? You have to have. Well, you have to have equality. You see, equality is actually a status. It means that everybody's equal to the full pain and punishment of the law. That's right. Equal rights. You see, that's what equal rights are. Equal rights can only be assigned equally if there is equality. The difference between equality and equity, I highly suggest people look up those two words and compare them. Equity simply means to acknowledge one's natural rights, or within the natural law. That's all it means. When you look up the word equality, you see that it's a political right, has nothing to do with natural rights. And it requires literally an artificial person, to a straw man, if you will, to acquire a status. Okay? Even the bloodline that we've been talking about for the last 3 days, even the bloodline are not in power just because of their blood. They are in power because they have an artificial status attached to them. So, for women, for the ladies out there, you got to understand that you don't have equality. You don't have true natural equity in this world. What you have is an artificial status that makes you equal to men, or the male of the species, under the legal code. Okay, it's artificial. Okay, the only way there's ever going to be equality of anybody, any race, any sex, the only time that's ever going to happen is in the heart and minds of men, both male and female. Now, that's never going to happen when you have a status that creates resentment because of a forced equality. Now, this is a hard concept to grasp, but since we're going to be talking about status today, I want to make sure that everybody understands that we, as men and women, are living under a legal status, which directly correlates with the way that we interact with government. It is our artificial person that is either male or female, and it is called a man or a woman. Unfortunately, that's how it works. So basically, when we're saying status, we have to always remember that a status cannot be attached to a living thing. A status can only be attached to the artificial person. Welcome, Burt. How you doing, man?
Howdy, bud. Doing pretty good. Trying to find my way through this insanity world of the legal political system.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. So we were going to try to talk today about this status and being below and being above the law, because a lot of people have heard the expression, they're acting like they're above the law. And people use that expression actually quite a bit. And they don't know that there's actually a lot of truth to that.
Absolutely.
And that's what I've been finding out in dealing with some of the situations in California. And there's a very interesting section of their code that we're going to attempt to dissect for folks here. And they can have their own fun trying to play with it, because it's nothing but a game of words that these people love to use. But this one is actually not too bad. I think the average man or woman that would read it will get the basic comprehension of it. But when you see this, and then you look at the whole picture of how it is that they subdivide the people into all these different classes, which are basically prejudicial classes, then it all begins to make sense.
You mean something actually makes sense?
Yeah, I think it actually makes sense. And it's funny that as you begin to look at this thing for what it is, because the problem is that everybody looks at this political world for what it is not. And that's why it is so difficult to understand, because we're looking at it and we're like, well, it doesn't make sense. It must be this. And we're trying to make something good out of it, something different out of it that it is not. And that's why it's so difficult to comprehend. But when we see the truth basics, the basics of the truth behind all this nonsense, then it begins to make real sense.
Well, I think people have a tough time imagining, like I said, I've said this before and I'll say it again. We are not in 1776. The solution is not 1776. That's all crap. That's all talk. That's all promotional junk made to make you buy products. Okay. The solution, again, the legal definition of solution is actually to end contract, to satisfy a contract. So the only solution that we can have in the legal realm is literally to end or satisfy a contract, to fulfill our duty, or to call it what it is, fraud, and get out of any contractual nature. And that includes what we're talking about, which is this class structure or the status that we are assigned. Now, again, we're all assigned this citizen status of which starts us off on a level of equality. And from that level, see, in order to have tyranny, in order to have higher statuses, in order to have inequality, you must first establish equality. Okay? So now that everybody's equal, now that everybody's made an equal citizen, now we can start building on that. We can say, okay, well, this person has a special status, and this person has such a status that he's actually outside of any law that would affect everyone else. And that's what we're talking about today. So we'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
He's a rebel and a runner. He's a signal turning green. He's a restless young romantic, wants to run the big machine. He's got a problem with his poisons, but you know we'll find a cure. He's cleaning up the systems to keep his nature pure.
All right, folks, welcome back. You're in the corporation. Again, a reminder, we have a chat room. It's corporationnation.chatango.com. That's CHATANGO.com. Again, with me is Freeman Burt, here every Thursday for our listening enjoyment. So Burt, we're talking about, again, we in order to really understand how status works, again, you have to first put all your ducks in a row. So you have to first assign a general status of quote-unquote equality and give equal rights under the law. And, of course, we know that when you get a right, for every one right you get about 30 or 40 negative aspects of that, meaning that, a right it's a double-edged sword, in other words, because, you have the right to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and all that stuff, extorted from, according to U.S. code. Those are your rights. So everybody has the equal right to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted or exacted from. Okay, so we understand that that's what status has created for the common mass of folks. Now, from there, we start building. And from there, all of a sudden, we can make people a little more, have a little more power than other people, a little more privilege, a little more exemption, until we get to the point where some people are completely exempt from the entire structure of law. But what's interesting about that is that that has to actually be a status from within the law before you can be without the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now, and we already spoke about this before, that within every body politic, there always seems to be a status that's higher than all the other ones, right? I mean, if you're in a monarchy, then the people that are there with the king, they're like at the top of everybody else. So within this body politic known as the United States of America, there is one highest political status within that group, and that status is one of a citizen as it existed prior to the creation of the Constitution. Okay? And that citizen is the one that is supposedly vested with the sovereignty that was supposedly taken away from the king. Okay? So the people that lived during that time, that was their idea of what a citizen was supposed to be, was one that was basically free, wasn't subject to anyone else. But then along came the 14th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment created a second tier underneath that other citizen. So it was a second type of citizen. And then, of course, when that citizenship was no longer viable because all those people already were free and died, then it transformed itself into a statutory citizen, which is the one that's in Title 8 of the U.S. Code. And that's a citizen that continues to be perpetuated on the people, and they have basically exited the previous status of the citizen under the meaning is, like they call it in one of the Supreme Court cases as Scott versus Sanford, is the Scott Dred Scott case. And that status now pretty much doesn't exist because everybody's acting as this freed slave. And what has happened is that the whole system of the United States government and state government is designed to protect your rights, to protect your right as a freed slave, as a congressional created fiction, which is a congressional created citizen, which is what exists in Title 8 of the U.S. Code. So the whole system is designed to protect you, to protect your rights, and those rights are privileges. People always mix up the two. A right is always a privilege when it comes from the body politic.
I think that it's important to say that you say there was a sudden change where people became these this new form of citizen or this new form of person, but before that happened, it's not fair just to say everybody was free, because to be free, that means responsibility. That was a time that I would like to go back and actually see where people were actually responsible for their own actions. People were actually responsible for their area, for their own, land and everything else. People were caretakers of their everything, and they took care of themselves. So when at this point that you're talking about came along, government basically grabbed everybody, stripped them naked, and threw some diapers on them, and has been changing the diapers ever since. We just hang around like babies, whining that we want more government help and government subsidy and government this and government that. Hey, I'm a farmer. Pay for my rice so that I can sell it. Hey, I'm a business. Loan me money so I can be a business. And then here, take all my shares away from me. Take all my rights. That is basically what happened. It was a government became the caretaker of us, whereas before we were the caretaker of ourselves. So it's a certain amount of responsibility that has to be spoken about when we're talking about being a free man, which anymore seems almost like a myth in this country. Although there are a lot of people that are trying their darndest to escape the tyranny and the abuse. But I just wanted to make that point that what you're really saying is that government became the parent of us instead of the child.
Exactly, and I didn't get a chance to send you this one statute from that same statute where that milk code came from, where they actually describe an infant, a child, a juvenile, and an adult as being equal. So there you can see that, at least in this one title, they straight up admit that a child and an adult are basically the same thing. So people don't realize that a person is just a person. A person cannot be a child. A person cannot be an adult. A person can only be a person. And under the law, you're always a ward of whoever it is that is protecting you. And if the state is protecting you, then you're a ward of the state. If you're protecting yourself, then you're sovereign. Then you're yourself. You don't need to be pampered or have someone put a diaper on you.
And remember that sovereign literally means you're above the law. That is the status of sovereignty. It's important to remember that when you're considering that the United States is, quote unquote, a sovereign nation. That literally means that it makes the laws and is exempt from its own laws when it chooses to be. That's the downside of sovereignty. But for the individual, not the legal individual, but the natural individual, sovereignty becomes, it basically makes you an outlaw. In other words, the law no longer applies to you, and therefore you are sovereign from it. You're not required to follow the statutes, codes, and regulations and citations and all that stuff. So sovereignty is a tricky word that we take for granted.
Concept. Yeah, it's a very difficult concept to absorb. But if we look at everything just simply from a political point of view, which what I'm finding out now, working through this thing, is that we have to acknowledge some form of political status within a system that is so huge, like the one that we're in here, in not just in this country, but in everywhere in the world.
Yeah, of course, because I remind people that the United States is now a state of the United Nations, making the United Nations the new central government. So you got to be really careful how that goes. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us for more Freeman Burt.
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about. What the object is all about.
Information in the form of energy streams in.
see-through, wrinkled like a walnut, and with the consistency of mushroom. Mushrooms. Like a walnut.
All right, folks.
The most mysterious part.
Welcome back. It is the brain, like a mushroom. So, Burt, go ahead. Go ahead and continue. This is, what we're doing is we're really dissecting our enslavement. We're
Exactly.
we're making an outline of the many ways that we are enslaved, and it's a paper trail. That's really all it is. It's just a big giant paper trail. We can put up all our papers, all of our little contracts, all of the things we've signed, and we see in front of us a collage that I call the paper man. It's a little easier to understand a paper man than a straw man, but the same thing. So it's our paper man. It's our artificial person. It's all these signature, all these contracts, all these things that we've agreed to unilaterally. And that's what we're talking about. And this jumble of paper is basically the basis of our status.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that people need to really comprehend is that all these supposed regulations, laws, whatever you want to call them, that they try to enforce on us, all come from some legislative body, okay? And that legislative body is supposedly elected by you when you go vote. So whenever you're complaining about whatever it is that you're complaining that has to do with the regulations or the laws, the people to blame are those people who you voted into office. And people need to realize that year after year after year, things don't change. Why is it that they don't change? It's because your status has never changed. So your life will never change until your status changes. And within this system, as long as you maintain that one lower class status, you're always going to be extorted because that's how the system is designed.
Why, Bert, are you suggesting that the right to vote is actually the status of voter?
Yes, and the way they read your status when you vote is that you are a beggar, and they're giving you basically the privilege of voting this elite into office to protect your rights.
You know what you're voting for? You're voting for your babysitters.
Yes, you're voting for daycare. Your daycare.
Someone's got to change that dirty diaper, right? Someone's got to be there when you cry out and you say, "Please help me, help me! I voted for you. You got to give me free stuff."
Yeah, and here's the part that people need to comprehend is that the people who are making these laws to take care of you cannot possibly be bound by the same laws that they're making because they're making these laws to protect you. Just like if you're a parent and you suddenly decide to make rules for your house, the rules don't really apply to you. They're for your children to abide by. And it's the same thing with the legislature.
Well, again, you're using these words, and this is why I say everybody's got to look up. Anytime you use a word when describing your status, describing your natural state or your corporate state, your artificial state, you got to see what that word means. So when you use the word protect, now in our natural state, and we're talking about our children, let's say, what are we going to do? We're going to naturally protect our children. If a wolf or a bear comes, sharp teeth and claws, we're going to do everything we can to protect our children. But I'll tell you what, when a politician or an attorney comes at our kids with a big ream of paper, we don't know what to do. Because it's actually them, by taking our child away from us, that's them protecting both the child and us. They're protecting our right to have our child kidnapped from us. You see the difference? You see the difference in these words. These words are crazy, crazy opposite of what we think. And that's why it's so important to start learning, not the law, but the language of the law. Because if you don't know the words that make up the law, if you're still stuck in conversational English and you read a law, you're going to be thinking, oh, well, that doesn't sound so bad. But the second you learn what these words mean, oh man, everything.
Yeah, then you come to find out that it's just a way of enslaving you with your own ignorance. So should we go ahead and read that one statute, and then maybe that will kind of get us going?
Which one are we on?
The one, the California Code 6252.
California Government Code, section 6252, under the definitions section, says B, a member of the public means, so we're defining what a member of the public is. And of course, government always, is very careful about defining what its law is. And we should also be very careful to define what our own law is.
Yeah, and most people out there consider themselves a member of the public, right?
Sure. Member of the public.
They do it proudly.
Means any person. Okay, so there we have the artificial status. And is any person except a member, agent, officer, or employee of a federal, state, or local agency acting within the scope of his or her membership, agency, office, or employment. Person, section C, person includes any natural person, corporation, partnership, limited liability company, firm, or association. It's interesting they include natural person there. But wow, so if you're acting under the capacity of a federal, state, or local agency, you're not acting as a member of the public?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? So if you have a judge, right? I mean, we've all heard that a judge cannot be sued, right? Why is it that he cannot be sued?
Well, I think it's the same reason that in the darn Constitution it says that while congressmen are acting in their official capacity, they cannot be harmed. They cannot be sued. They cannot do anything wrong. There's no arresting them. There's no messing with them. They're completely protected, not by the law, but from the law.
Yeah, and if we look at some of these things from a logical point of view, of course it would make sense. I mean, it's just like if you have a referee refereeing your game, I mean, you can't go after him for being a referee. You can't sue him because he gave a decision that you didn't like. I mean, it would make perfect sense.
Sure.
But this goes beyond that. This goes to a point to where the referee now can also create laws and cause all the other players to be bound by the law, and he himself is not bound by it, and his enforcers are also not bound by it. And that's the picture that people need to realize, because what this here is saying is that the enforcers, when they're enforcing public law on the members of the public, they themselves are above it. They're accepted from it. So where it might be illegal for you to beat someone with a nightstick, it's not illegal for the guy with the nightstick.
But see, this brings into the equation again the maxims of law, the concept of color of law, because, color of law, which one comes first? Since color of law is a federal, I would think it would actually trump, and I know it's copied into the state legal system. So color of law says that you cannot beat someone up just because you have an off. I mean, in other words, you're responsible for your actions despite your badge or despite your membership. So it's an interesting dichotomy here, because this, as you say, says, well, okay, they're not a member of the public, so they're not bound by public law. And on the other side of that, when they take off that badge, what are they? A member of the public?
Well, when they take the badge off, but I was the last few days I've been looking at the codes dealing with the execution of a warrant. Like when an officer is giving a warrant to go arrest you. There are certain terms that are used in the statutes, and one of them is must, may, and shall. S-H-A-L-L. And people believe that must means that you're required to do it. But no, must means may, and may means may. And shall means that you have a duty to do it, to exercise it. So when you're reading anything about the duties that an officer has is usually may.
So must means voluntarily may do something. That's interesting. We'll get more into that when we get back. Stay with us.
Then what you waiting for? We've already stripped you of your liberty, privacy, civil rights, and dignity. You want some more?
Is this real? Versus this ride? The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The ride goes up and down, round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored. Up and down, round and round, and it's very loud.
Oh, it's just a ride,
Don't
folks.
worry, don't be afraid.
Just a ride. The great comedians all passed away. Oh, well. So, Burt, I was reading the second part of this, and this is the Health and Safety Code, or HSC. I assume that's California still.
Yes.
General provisions. And here it defines person again. And it's funny because in each code, and you have to be careful with this also, folks, just to warn you, because I fell into this trap a lot until I realized every time you define something in the U.S. Code or in all these other statutes and things within, you always got to remember that the definitions are specific to that particular section of the U.S. Code or that particular section. They don't carry over. So in this particular section, it redefines person. Person means any person. Doesn't say natural person this time. Any person, firm, association, corporation, organization, partnership, business, trust, corporation, limited liability company, or company. That's a person. And a state means the state of California unless, and this is interesting, unless applied to the different parts of the United States. In the later case, if applied to the different parts of the United States, the word state includes the District of Columbia and the territories. So when we say the word state, we can mean our own state, or we can mean the entirety of the United States controlled by the evil corporation in the District of Columbia.
Yeah. But before we jump on that one, I wanna work a little bit more on the previous one, because the previous one will lead right into this next one. And now this upper one that we were reading, now I forgot, but every statute, the member of the public, what I'm saying is that every set of statutes for every state has a section that is called the construction of the code. And there will be a certain number of terms in there that the meaning of those terms do not change within the code. Those are like the most important terms of the code. And we'll get into that next time when I'm on with you, because every state has this one section that is called the construction of the code, and those terms don't change. And I think this part here comes from there, but I'm not sure. But what the part that I wanted to show you, and that's why I highlighted it in red, is that expression any person. You see that it's on 652 and it's also on 19. The expression any person, that's actually a term. Any person.
So it's not just being descriptive, it's actually a status.
Yeah, it means any person. So you can also be an any person. So any person would be, of course, it says right there, any person means a member of the public. And then in the other one, it says any person means a person. And another thing that I really want people to keep in mind when you are reading through the codes, you will often find a term being defined. And then, so like here, you will see member of the public means any person. But you are not going to find any person as being the first part of the meaning. So the meanings that you will see throughout the code, you have to be able to use them in reverse. So if member of the public means any person, then that means that any person means member of the public, right? If A equals B, then B equals A, right? And you have to keep that in your mind when you're reading through this code. Otherwise, it gets very confusing if you're trying to define what it is that they are saying. So the point I really want to get across is that in this part right here, member of the public, they're making it clear that there is another class of persons that could actually be outside of this group known as member of the public. So if you are a member of the public and the law supposedly applies to you as a member of the public, those who are enforcing it are outside of that law that is being enforced. That's why they are able to get away with so many things that you answer yourself. So why is it that they can go faster when the speed limit supposedly is XYZ? How come they can kill you and it's not murder? How come they can maim you and it's not assault? How is it that they can do all these things? How is it that politicians can get away with fraud and it's not fraud? How is it that the judges can do all these insane things in court and it's not insane?
Well, it's kind of like a cloak of invisibility. It's like if you're a member of the public, then everything you do is on the record. Every action is recorded and witnessed and everything else. But if you're not a member of the public, and that it's like the virtual camera is not on you, and your actions are not recorded. You have exemption. Exemptions probably one of the most important parts of status that we can have. Of course, we know about exemptions for vaccinations and other such. We have religious exemptions. We have ideological or philosophical exemptions. And there's one other medical exemptions for such things. So the concept of an exemption really, when we go read the Constitution, we see that there are exemptions after exemptions after exemptions. For instance, one of my biggest pet peeves that people use all the time, they don't understand what they're saying. Again, a perfect example of acknowledging a right that harms you in a most serious way is to acknowledge the Fifth Amendment, or as far as the Bill of Rights, which says specifically that you can have your life, your liberty, and your property taken away from you with due process of law. Okay, what it actually says is that those things cannot be touched without due process of law. So in other words, if you just reword it, it means that your life, your liberty, and property can be taken away from you with due process of law. That's what the Fifth Amendment says. That's where eminent domain comes from. It's called the Takings Clause. So it's the perfect example of how riddled with exemptions the Constitution is. It doesn't protect, well, I should say it does protect your right to have your life, liberty, and property taken away from you. The problem that we have it's not that the Fifth Amendment is inherently bad. It's that the only way it's good is if you have honorable men in the court system. We don't have that. We have a private non-governmental association called the Bar Association that takes an oath to something other than the people. So you don't have honor in the system. Therefore, the Fifth Amendment, in my opinion, it might as well be inherently bad because it leaves open the possibility that a court can take those rights away from you. And that is, again, if that was a contract, I would never sign that. No one in their right mind would sign a contract that says that the contractor can take away the contractee's life, liberty, and property just because their opinion says that it can. It's a ridiculous concept. And that's the problem with the Constitution, is that these exemptions are all over the place. It makes the state, which again means the state of California or the District of Columbia, which is lays claim over all states and all territories. It makes the state literally exempt from the law, and it changes the word protection into the word force.
That is true. So anyway, what we need to realize is that when we are acting as a member of the public, it's no different than you being a child in daycare. And everybody there in the daycare is your government, is your legislators. And, they have certain rules, like you can go out and play, every 2 hours for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Well, the people working in the administrative office, they don't have to do that. But you do.
Well, it sounds like we should all be putting in claims for child abuse.
Yeah, we should.
All of us. Adult child abuse. That would be an interesting one. Mm-hmm. All right, folks. We are coming to our top of the hour break. We will be back. Join us for the second hour. And we'll probably take some calls there in the last half hour or so. Stay with us.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you. Tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men. Machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite!
All right, folks, welcome back. We're in the Corporation Nation. I'm going to remind folks that we do have a new chat room, and that is corporationnation.chatango.com. With me today is Freeman Burt. His website is onlyfreemen.com, and we are discussing the concept of status. We're actually taking a giant crap on it, really. But the concept of status and how that it either gives or takes away or does both certain rights, privileges, and immunities. And what we've discovered is, under the California Code, a member of the public is specifically defined as someone who seems to be outside of the law. A member of the public is someone who is inside the law, whereas someone acting as an employee or in the scope of his legal duties seems to not be a member of the public and therefore not subject to the same quote-unquote equal protection of the law. It's a very interesting thing to realize because, and again, we used the example of, well, why is it okay for a policeman to hit me but not, my best friend? Or why is it okay for a policeman to suddenly use 1,000,000 volts of electricity on my person, whereas if anyone else did that, I could sue the heck out of them? So it's an interesting little dichotomy there.
Yeah, let's review that term status for the folks.
Go ahead.
Okay, status, standing. Very important word. When you're in court, isn't that one of the most important things that they want to know, what your standing is? But they don't tell you that it means the same thing as status. So state or condition, social position. Wow, that rhymes. So your social position is important. The legal relation of individual to rest of community. That's another thing that people need to comprehend. You being a member of the community is not the same as you being a member of the public. You could be a member of the public and be subject to the community, which in fact is what a 14th Amendment, supposedly citizen is. A statutory citizen is subject to the community. So if you're not part of the community, then you're a subject. The rights, duties, capacities, and incapacities which determine a person to a given class. So there we're talking about a class again.
Right, and that was the whole purpose, or the supposed purpose, of this whole nation thing that we have was to sort of get away from the class structure, but apparently that is all fallacy.
Yeah, because the people that supposedly were allowed to run this supposed government, they figured out a really good way to put themselves on top of the rest of everybody else, which is in fact the purpose of every government. Every government in any country, when you set it up, it's like a disease that has to be kept in control. I mean, that's what the founding fathers supposedly said, right? Mm. That you have to keep it in control. And if you don't, it becomes a virus. And it then infiltrates into the free people, and they realize, hey, we could be a little more free than some of the other people if we get into the government and we change everybody else's status to one lower than us. When in fact the people in the government have a lower status than the people because they take a position as a servant. So then the definition goes on and says, a legal personal relationship not temporary in its nature, nor terminable at the mere will of the parties, with which third persons and the state are concerned. So once they put you in that status, guess what? They want to keep you there. That sounds like the free America, right?
No such thing.
Yeah. So understanding what status is then opens up the door for you to comprehend a lot more things about the way the system works. So the next term we may want to look at, Clint, would be a body politic or corporate.
Well, no, before we do that, is not the slave, is that a status?
It's a status.
Is it a class?
It's a class.
But is it a standing? Because you really have no standing as property.
Well,
That's
it is. Well, you if you're property, you have standing, which is you have standing as property.
Well, yeah,
I mean, that is your standing. But you as a free man, as one of the free people, you have no standing against a piece of property.
Right.
I mean, how can you possibly have standing against a chair?
So if you have the status of slave, which is property, there is no way that you could actually sue someone with a status of citizen because they are not property, or they are not the property of another citizen, I guess is the best way.
Right, they're at a higher citizen, and that's why in order to make everybody equal, because they try to put you at the same equal status as a corporation. I mean, come on, how can you stand in court and sue a corporation which is like a chair? How can you sue a chair? It's a piece of property. So either the property comes up to your level or you go down to the level of the property. And that's what they do to us in court day in and day out. They bring us to the level of the property, which means they bring us down to the status of person. And the corporation is supposed to be a person as well. So now you're both equal. Now you can sue each other. Makes no sense.
Well, and that's, if you go to Section 1981 of Title 42, it's very specific that you have the right to sue and be sued. It's a very important right, because without it, how could government possibly make you do things?
Yeah, so you have the right to put yourself in that status to sue and be sued as property.
Fun with words. So you want to move on to what is a body politic?
Yeah, body politic or corporate. I mean, that expression. See, and what really is interesting is when you learn some of these basic terms, they will just pop at you when you're listening to the news. They use these terms day in and day out.
Yeah.
But it goes right over our heads. Because we've never taken the time to understand what they mean. So you want to do that one, body politic?
Sure. This is Black's 4th edition, legal dictionary, body politic or corporate, a social compact. I love the word social, too. A social compact by which the whole people covenants with each citizen, and each citizen with the whole people, that all shall be governed by certain laws for the common good. A term applied to a corporation, a municipality, middle states, those are all court cases actually, or a school district, state or nation or public associations, Utah State Building Commission for use of benefit, da-da-da-da-da. Basically, a term applied to a corporation, social compact. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
Neighbor, welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Well, maybe if I press this button. There are so many things to learn about in this world. And so many people who can help us learn. And so many people who can help us learn. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind?
All right, folks, welcome back.
You can grow ideas.
You know, I was asked by some folks out here in Utah, some local folks, to do a little public speaking, something that I'm not exactly used to. I like to hide behind the little microphone here in my basement and be perfectly comfortable without anybody watching me. So I'm going to have to imagine a big naked audience, unfortunately. But if you're around the Utah area, the Salt Lake and Utah County area, I'm going to be speaking about Common Core and going through my whole presentation on, well, Common Core really is just a little tiny little piece in a major, major puzzle. And without the Common Core standards, that puzzle would not be able to exist. It's kind of, I refer to it as a train, Common Core being the coupling to the train. If you just release the coupling, which is the Common Core standards, and the whole train would basically fall apart. The bad part about that, of course, is that the steam engine that is now pulling that train is the United Nations. So, if you're in the area and you have some free time, it's going to be this Saturday, which is just 2 days away, at 2 p.m. It's a free event, and it's at the Spanish Fork Fairgrounds in Utah County in the High Chaparral Room, High Chaparral Room, in the back, near the Ponderosa Room, close to the arena there. And we'll be talking about a lot of issues, including Agenda 21 and the private partnership model, public-private partnership model. I just posted a blog about that today if you need information or whatever. So, love to see you guys, and I'll stick around as long as it takes to answer any questions that I can answer. And, I don't know, you can buy me lunch or dinner. I wouldn't mind. Man's got to eat. So, all right, Bert, you know, I was thinking about doing this every day just because I love the legal language is just so messed up. But the word of the day today, wish I had Pee Wee Herman here and Conkey to tell me the word of the day, but the word of the day is plantations. This is out of Bouvier's Law Dictionary of 1856, and it's online. Plantations is defined as colonies or dependencies. In England, this word, as it is used in certain chapters, is never applied to any of the British dominions in Europe, but only to the colonies in the West Indies and America. So, folks, when we say the word colony, we're actually, these weren't little free things that were outside of England. When the colonies all got together and created the what was it called? The Confederacy. They were still colonies. Okay. They weren't independent. They were actually dependencies. And the other definition, which I find just so amusing, is by plantation is also meant a farm. Who runs plantations? Slave owners. Who works on plantations? Why slaves, of course. Okay, Bert, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off subject. So let's go back to this very interesting definition of body politic, a social compact by which the whole people covenants with each citizen. So we basically contract with each other in that certain way, and each citizen with the whole people, that all shall be governed by certain laws for the common good, or also a term applied to a corporation.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when you keep looking at all these terms, somehow the word corporation always seems to pop in. God, could it be that we're living in a corporation nation? Did I coin that term? That was me, right?
Yeah, that was you. I didn't have anything to do with that. Actually, that was a Corporation Nation was a book, and I didn't find this out until after I named my own stuff that. It was actually a book written, I don't remember who the author is, but Corporation Nation, just so I don't, it's not plagiarism, I swear it was a mistake. But I use the, and that makes it different. The Corporation Nation. But yeah, it's that's the idea, is that everything is corporate, and a compact, as it says, is you're literally in compact with each other, not on the natural realm, not that you're actually responsible, but in a contractual way, and that's the difference.
Okay, and that's the next point that we were going to get into, because the definition of the word compact is, like you correctly said, it's an agreement. It's a contract between parties, which create obligations and rights capable of being enforced and contemplated as such between the parties in their distinct and independent characters. So without a contract, without a compact, there can be no enforcement. But yet, they treat us as though we have some kind of a contract written in blood.
Well, I mean, it kind of boils down to that, actually. I mean, that would take us in a whole different direction if we started talking about the blood oath and everything. You got a bunch of different things here. Which other one did you want to cover?
Okay, well, so
go ahead.
Well, I mean, the thing that I want people to realize is that, okay, we're talking about a body politic, which everything in this country, everything in your state, everything in your county, in your city, it's all revolving around a body politic. And they're going under an assumption that just because you happen to be there, suddenly you're under a compact. I mean, what kind of insanity is that? I mean, if you step into Walmart, does that mean that you are automatically into a contract with Walmart and you get to get the benefits of the stock market from Walmart? No, they'd be like, you're insane, sir. Where is your receipt of your stocks that you purchased? Wait, but I'm here. I'm in Walmart. Doesn't that make me part of your compact? Don't I get the benefits of all the stocks and everything? No, they'll give you a third shoe and throw you out the door.
Well, that would be interesting, though, to walk into to Walmart and say, "Hey, I'm a citizen of Walmart, and I'm demanding free health care, so I'm going to take this peroxide and these Band-Aids and everything else," and then walk over to the food aisle and say, "Hey, I need the benefit of free, food stamps, and I'm going to just, write on a piece of paper that this is a food stamp, and I'm going to start taking all the food, and I'm going to, it's that's how ridiculous this is, and it's almost like these guys came out overnight one day and they just covered the entire land of the United States, all the states individually, and they covered it all with a see-through piece of cellophane. And all of a sudden we come out, and all of a sudden everywhere we look, it looks exactly the same. But we're actually not walking on the land anymore. We're walking on this artificial corporate structure. We're walking on the cellophane. And because we're walking on the cellophane and we don't even know it, because they've somehow built a certain ignorance of it into it. It's silent. You can't hear it when you walk on it. You can't feel it. You can't touch it. You can't taste it. But yet you're walking on it. You're no longer a man of the land. You're now a citizen of the cellophane. Isn't that weird? I mean, it's
Yeah.
Oh, we're the cellophane people. We'll be back. We'll take some calls and more with Burt. Stay with us.
With no shoes on their feet, how's the people living in the street? Oh, there's a solution.
Derivatives, quantitative easing, trade imbalances, recession, low GDP, nations close to collapsing, and subprime loans, foreclosed homes, and people's taxes spent to bail out too big to fail AAA banks again. Fear levels rising as a US crash seems imminent, having smashed the debt ceiling of 14 trillion. Despite protests and clashes in Athens streets, the IMF imposed structurally unjust programs in Greece, where in fact the term economy entered our language from the Greek oikonomia, meaning household management. Well, how are we managing? Theories abound, but in practice, does anyone actually know what the hell's even happening? Well, seems we've come to our global auditing, our financial day of reckoning. It's an
all right, folks, welcome back. I don't think anybody really knows what's happening. Not really. Hey, Burt, I got a question for you, my friend.
Go ahead, sir.
How do you feel about making a cameo appearance tomorrow as well, so we can continue this topic? Because I can tell we're not going to get through all this. Are you busy tomorrow? My guest just canceled on me because I have a friend that actually just got elected to the council, and
nice.
She's like, I don't want to come on before I'm sworn in.
Oh, okay.
So maybe next week. So if you're free tomorrow, I'd love to have you back. I think people really enjoy your rhetoric.
10-4, Roger
All right.
Dodger.
Join me tomorrow for Freeman Burt on the Corporation Nation Radio program. This is always fun. I'm sure glad you agreed to do this every week. I'll tell you what, let's take some calls because these great folks have been holding on for a while here. Ken in Fort Worth. How you doing, Ken? Ken, where did you go? Kathleen in Texas, are you there?
Hi, Clint. Thanks, Burt. I have the answer to everything.
Woo!
You ready?
Are you
okay,
God?
It's 1 Kings chapter 8, and that's the Catholic Bible. And I think in the Protestant Bible it's the first book of Samuel. And this is when the Israelites wanted to have a king. And God told Samuel, don't worry, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. And then he gives very succinctly, beautifully, everything that you've been talking about and that we've experienced all through history. Every government, because they're made by men, they are kings. The Constitution's the king. Every government, they want a king other than God. And what he says is, very clearly, this is what will happen. All your men will become his soldiers. All your women will become his bakers and servants. And then you will also be his farmers, and you will be his, everything, all like this. And then he says, and his servants and his eunuchs will reap the benefit of your work. So that's all the corporations and so forth. But they get their status because they are the servants of the king. But, but anyway, I've seen this, been so appalled by this in the last few years, just seeing the Constitution raised to an idol form, so important, and it's just another creation of men which is vulnerable it's exactly the description. And so we are the workers in the farm, and the eunuchs and the servants of the king are the bureaucrats. And it's always been that way. And but we can live. It's like a parallel life, a parallel universe. And when you described your Clint, your childhood, a very happy, wonderful family, and the church represented to you people helping people. And I, too, had what God gave me, wonderful parents and family. And so I experienced the same thing. Now, it was a Catholic church, and we went to Mass all the time. But the whole idea was that everyone who crossed your path was a precious child of God. And to see this, and then to see my parents, everyone who crossed our threshold, they were treated like as if we were on a prairie, and they were a treasure. Oh, what story do you have to tell? And they were treated no respecter of men. They would, whether it was the plumber or whoever it was, my mother would fix homemade minestrone soup and a big apple pie, and send them home with an apple pie, and just treated everyone just as a treasure. And
isn't it sad? Because thanks for your call so much. I really appreciate it. Now what do we do, though, Kathleen? We actually send virtual gifts. We send virtual pies. We send little emoticons. We don't do anything for each other. Instead of, actually trying to help people, what do? We give our money to corporations, and we get a pink bracelet that says we're curing cancer. No, a bracelet's not going to cure cancer. Only the people, when they go outside of this is why the Bible, and this is why I say this over and over and over, somewhere in the Bible, I can't remember where right now, it specifically says, do not put your faith in men. Do not allow men to rule you. Never put your faith in men. Again, though, what does that mean? And I think you'll appreciate this, Kathleen, because you see every word in the Bible very much had a legal meaning. Okay? Faith, according to Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856, is defined as probity. Good faith is the very soul of contracts. Faith also signifies confidence, belief, as full faith and credit ought to be given to the acts of a magistrate while acting within his jurisdiction. You see how that works? This is why you would never want to give or put faith in man. See, the problem is, as citizens, we are faith. Faith is a financial instrument. We're no longer flesh and blood to these kings that Kathleen is talking about. You see, all these words have a very specific meaning. And again, thanks for the call. I wanted to get to Gary in North Carolina. I think that's North Carolina, because Gary found something that we need to talk about. How you doing, Gary? Oh, is Gary there?
Gary fell asleep on us.
I'm here.
Oh. Hey, Gary, how you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hey, how are you?
What's up, man?
Well, I was on last week, and I went to court last Friday, and we were on the chat, and the question everyone should ask, because I got a very interesting response from the judge. I need to find it here so I don't mess up what to say. Oh, Lord. Okay, so for the...
Now, just to be clear, this is what you actually stated in court, correct?
This is actually what I stated in court, right? I said, for the record, the injured claimant makes the motion that the state clarifies the status of the accused is the same as the status of a citizen referred to in Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States of America. And
response?
The response was, we're signing you an attorney search. Here's your attorney's number. You return back here next December 9th. We'll see you then.
So they told you they were assigning you an attorney? That was their answer?
That was your answer, right.
Oh. Well, I was mentioning in the chat room that I didn't like the way that statement was stated, because it almost sounded like you were asking the judge to give you a status as opposed to telling him that you're not any status that he assigned you. So I was a little interested in how that actually played out. But so did he sweat? Did he look at you like, oh crap, or was it a?
Well, it was actually a woman, and she was really more polite than most judges are. And she did give me a look like I had green eyes or something. And I thought it was very, there was a lot of back and forth there. I just summarized the important issue there. But So the thing is, they do not want to address your status.
And this is what we were talking about last week, right, Bert? That we've got to start asking for what they think we are when we step into the court.
Right.
Exactly.
Because we can't go in saying we're this and we're that, because we've got to prove the fact if we state we are something. But if we ask questions and they tell us something, then we can say, can you show me the evidence, please?
Yeah, exactly. You're rebutting it. All right, folks, we'll be back for the final segment here. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're talking about the Force today and how to use it. Oh, I snorted. Hey, we're talking about the Force today and how to use it. The Force is really your internal soul. It is your flesh and blood body, which is the vehicle that carries that soul. Bert, I know you wanted to get into before we have to go today, but again, Bert's going to join me tomorrow, I think, prima facie, that is, and we're going to continue this conversation. But you want to talk about what's called youth organizations.
Yeah, I think it's important that people realize some of the organizations that they themselves are getting involved in as juvenile adults or as juvenile children. And the one that is most obvious to people is the Boy Scouts of America. Very popular organization, and people don't realize that it's actually a federal corporation.
And let me add that somewhere in all my genealogy notes, I do remember that the founder of the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts was also a bloodline cousin. Go on.
Oh, okay. Well, and then you also have the Girl Scouts of the United States of America. So your girls are involved in there. There you go. You have the Boy Scouts. The Boys Clubs of America, the Girls Clubs of America, the Young Men's Christian Association. So they actually have Christian organizations in the federal government. The Young Women's Christian Association.
Now we're reading out of 5 U.S. Code 301 Department regulations from a government organization and employees, the agents generally. Interesting. I don't know what to make of this, although it sounds like you're... Well, I won't make a distasteful joke today. What should we garner from this, Bert?
Well, I mean, you also have 4-H clubs. I was living in the mountains for a while, and they had a 4-H club there that all the young, youngsters in the community, this is like a very country area, they were all involved in. And I had no idea that 4-H clubs is also a federal organization. So, I mean, they're so deep into the fabric of our life. Big brothers, big sisters, all that is the same thing.
What you're really saying, Bert, is that they're deep into the community.
Yes.
Or that important word we discovered.
And they're trying to manipulate your mind, your brain, everything about you from every angle that they can possibly come up with. And I mean, like this neighborhood where I'm living now, I mean, you should see the semi-trucks that pull up when it's time to spread out the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts cookies. I mean, it's one heck of a business. It's semi after semi coming full of cookies. And I mean, in about 2 hours, all those semis are emptied. All these parents come up in their SUVs and load them up.
Huh. I wonder, I've never thought to look at who makes those and how much of their stock is owned by government.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's another blog for you.
Yeah. I notice also Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America is a federal organization, but there's also these really kind of creepy ones. The Civil Air Patrol, the Campfire USA, the Young Marines, the Naval Sea Cadets Corps. I mean, really what these are militant youngster groups, right? I mean, they're, I hate to say that about the Boy Scouts, but I mean, they're federal. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and here's what they say. The purpose of their organization: to provide training in citizenship, leadership, physical fitness, service to community, and most importantly, teamwork. Because they want you to be a team player.
And
one
it does
that doesn't complain.
Sure, it does say that these are to serve individuals under the age of 21.
Mm-hmm.
Promote the development of character and ethical and moral values. What is that? I mean, again, what does that mean? Because remember, government only deals with persons. It doesn't deal with real living, kids.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking about promoting the development of character being your citizen, your artificial person, your reputation, your credit score, your all of those things, and ethics. I mean, for God's sake, the last person I'd want my child learning ethics from are the inside traders of the Senate and Congress, and Obama for that matter, and moral values. Okay, maybe they'll put a drone piloting course in the Boy Scouts. I mean, to kill, 95% children and kids before they ever kill anyone they're targeting. I mean, these are the character and ethical and moral values. That's where they're coming from. Wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, since when is the government supposed to be in the business of moral? Isn't the people supposed to bring the moral to their community? It just makes no sense.
Hey, I think we still have Gary on the line. Gary, you still there? Okay. Well, let's take a final call here, and we'll certainly discuss this more in detail. Patrick in Toledo.
Hello, guys. How you doing?
Hi there.
Good. How are you?
Fine. I just have one question. I know a lot of people are talking about this UCC. Does UCC bring you to the same level as the corporations?
Well, I'm not a fan of the UCC because of if you try to step into it, you're obviously stepping into the realm of the corporation. And in order for you to play into it, you have to take some kind of a personhood within that game.
Okay,
also,
I understand that. And that crossed my mind. That's why I was so iffy about it. But this program here is just trying to get people out of the system, correct?
That's our goal, is to get to, not so much to get out of the system, but to understand when you are in it. Most people don't even know they're in it.
Well, yeah, and to stop being a victim of your status. That is really what we're saying. To rebut the status so that these things don't apply to you, so that you no longer have a babysitter. Now, as far as UCC, which is Uniform Commercial Code, that is part of a system that I uncovered a while ago. It's basically when a bunch of attorneys get together, write a bunch of law, and then lobby each state to pass what's called uniform laws. There's over 118 uniform laws, including Child Protective Services, including the Uniform Commercial Code. If you actually go and look up uniform laws on Wikipedia, I think it is. I wish I could remember where I posted those. I think it's in the Cracking the Cult of the Constitution, my first one. I think there's a list of all 118 uniform laws. And basically, it's very similar to the National Governors Association passing Common Core standards in every state. They create it outside of government, they lobby themselves inside of government, and pass their own bills. So it's uniform. And when you see who actually creates it, you're going to die, because it's just a consortium of different attorneys, basically. So me personally, at first when I saw the straw man, UCC, redemption, and all that stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's great. It's great. And then I started realizing it's in the name. Uniform, commercial, and code. Those are all bad things in my book. So personally, I don't think that's the route that I would choose to take. It is there for the taking if you want to choose that route, but I don't personally see anybody having much success with it. So,
okay, all right.
Yeah,
great.
I mean, it depends where you're using it. I mean, if you're like fighting the banks, you can use the UCC code to tell the banks, hey, guess what? You're not following your UCC code. How about following it?
Yeah. I mean, everything is a weapon. That's the other aspect of it. So you can use it against them, which is really what the law is for.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we will continue this tomorrow. I want to thank you for joining me and remind you that I'll be my latest blog post on realityblogger.wordpress.com is about my presentation I'll be making this weekend on Common Core, which should be interesting. All right. We'll see you tomorrow, folks. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Bert.
Alrighty, Ben.
Head callers.